Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we're going to be taking a look at the first solo scenario for the Horizon's Wrath faction in Cloudspire. So this is the scenario Strike the Bell, where we have the Horizon's Wrath pirates going up against the Airy faction, the bird people, who we looked at a little bit in our last video, specifically the Elephant Kazi and how to control them. So if you're interested in learning how to specifically deploy and control the Elephant Kazi when you are playing against them in solo mode, check out the video that's going to be popping up in the right hand corner at this moment. But today I just want to cover, instead of doing a full playthrough, I just want to cover some of the tips and strategies that I found work for getting through this scenario successfully. So before I do that, I do want to just show off my kind of generic towers here. I had these printed off by Jason Schradnick. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but I was put in touch with him through Facebook. Found him in a group I was in, and he used his 3D printer to print these out for me, and I did pay him for them. But these are a really nice option if you don't want to pay for the miniatures expansion for Cloudspire, but you do want to give some 3D depth to your game. If you are interested in purchasing something from, or having Jason Schradnick, and you can see I have two different options here that he printed out for me in two different colors. You can print them in any color, but he has various other options. But going out and finding some generic towers like this is a really great way to just have them separated on either side, and for a fraction of the price that the miniatures expansions are, you can add some 3D depth. And I can use these spires. I know these don't look like a sailing ship like the Horizon's Wrath ones do, but for the most part they just work. They are generally tower-ish spire looking, so I feel like they work for the heirs and will work for most other factions too. So just something to consider if you are wanting to bling out your game of Cloudspire without breaking the bank. So again, I'm going to put Jason's info to his Facebook profile, which is how I got in touch with him, in the comments or in the description below. If you're interested in reaching out to him, he'd love to help you out with some stuff like this. So let's get back to the strategies for how to be successful in the Strike the Bell scenario. So right off the bat, this is essentially the opening setup. I'm not going to cover the groupings and the waves right now, but what I want to talk about are specifically where your towers are. Keem's tower here, or Keem perched on top of the Regal Outlook here, and how that's right in front of the gate. So in this scenario, you actually start with these 4 towers. They're given to you, and you also start with all of your cannons active. Now you don't have any cannonballs yet, but they're pretty easy to obtain. But you'll notice that you have 4 cannons, 2 here, your kind of interior cannons, and then your 2 exterior cannons. So you have all 4. Now how the cannons work, if you're not familiar with it, is that when you use a cannonball, spend a cannonball either at the beginning or the end of your turn, you roll a spire die, or you can roll multiples. You can shoot multiple cannonballs, and if you are successful, either rolling a 1 or a 2, it's going to take that 2 damage and it's going to travel in a straight line until it hits something. So unfortunately, you'll notice that the scenario placed our own spires directly in the way of our cannons right off the bat. Each cannon, if it fires in a straight line, will actually damage our own spires, and that can happen. That is a legal move, especially in this scenario. They point out that you can attack your own spire. So right off the bat, we can't really use the cannons. So how do we move these, specifically these 2 right here? How do we get rid of them? So one option is to, one of the events, actually I believe it's if you roll a 3 or a 4, actually allows you to fire off a cannon for free. No cannonball is required, and you get to choose. Well, in any instance, especially if you do it in the opening scenario, you're going to hit one of your spires. So you might as well fire it off. I typically aim for this lifeboat right here, because that allows me then eventually, if I can get rid of this lifeboat, to fire all the way across and hit this Regal Lookout and Keem all the way across the map. Again, there is no range limiter to the Cannonball. It just goes until it hits something, whether it's yours or your opponent's. So right off the bat, we are thinking about how we can get rid of this lifeboat. Shooting cannons at it is an option, but also they point out that your own hero can damage your own spires. Now, why would they say that in the beginning? Well, that's because, unfortunately, you cannot use Mistbane, because Mistbane does not have the ability to travel onto this forest hex here and get adjacent to the lifeboat, but Traxtail does. Now, I wouldn't necessarily bring Traxtail out in the first wave, but in the second wave you can probably afford the CP to bring Traxtail out along with some other minions. And you can bring Traxtail out right off the bat and hit this thing 2 or 3 times, depending on whether you've hit it with a Cannonball already, and all of a sudden this thing is gone, and then certainly get Traxtail out of the way before you fire off a cannon. And it can come all the way across the board and hit either Keem or the Spire. In this instance, since these guys are stacked up together and this is the first thing it would hit, you get to choose. So that's one strategy, obviously, is getting rid of this lifeboat, which enables you to fire off your cannon at this tower, and then eventually your gate, which is one of the objectives, defeating the gate with a cannonball. So that's how we get the lifeboat out of the way. Another way is to actually make use of the lifeboat, and that would be to have one of the heroes hop on it, boom, boom, it takes them back, but at that point the hero is out of play. The hero has gone back to the fortress and they just recover their health and are done for the round. So if you use Traxtail, if you come here right off the bat, you're going to have him knock on the Spire until it's gone, and then he is active until he goes into campfire mode. So what I generally like to do is have Mistbane come up, grab some Sourcewell 2 at a time. This means he can only move 1 hex at a time, but then it will take him 2 turns to get back to this lifeboat and ride this lifeboat back to the fortress. Again, if he takes any hits at that point, he can recover and he's just nice and fresh for the next wave. And now this lifeboat is out of the way, so technically if there was something sitting right here or right here, you could fire this cannon at it. But this cannon then is not going to hit any of the Air's fortress. And in this scenario, you do not have the option to move your pirate ship like you do in other scenarios. So, but the lifeboat is a great way to get your heroes back to the fortress when they're carrying the source, because the source slows them down. Now, what you're probably saying is, oh, well, we destroyed 1 lifeboat and then we rode 1 back and now we don't have any. Well, what I want you to consider is when you have the source available to upgrade your fortress with Launch Bay Flight Deck for 3 source, that allows you to build Shadow Skiffs and Lifeboat Spires. And then eventually, once you have taken out this landmark, say with a Buccaneer who has the Hunter keyword and gets an extra hit against landmarks, you now have influence, because this is basically, you know, you've got a ton of spires on this hex, so you have influence over this hex. You can then, as a limited build option, it doesn't even have to be during the build phase, you can build a lifeboat right here. And say I'm in the middle of a scenario and Traxtail is sitting right here with 2 source and can only move 1 at a time, I can take a limited build option, place it right here, and then in that very next move, you know, that same turn, use my movement phase to put a hero onto that lifeboat. And I can do this as many times as I want, as long as I have the source to spend it on. So that is a big tip for how to get the source back, especially when you want to carry 2 at a time. Build yourself a lifeboat and just keep doing limited build options or during the build phase, put a lifeboat right here. You're then instantly one movement away from getting back to your fortress. So that kind of covers how to easily get all of the source, which is, in my opinion, the easiest objective to complete in this scenario. So how do we come about getting all the way up here and defeating the heir's fortress gate and also all these spires? So let's actually, we're not even really going to look at the heroes. We're going to look at, because I forgot to put one other, there should be a minaret right here. So I apologize, I missed that during my setup. But the first thing you need to do is get rid of these two towers. Not necessarily Keem, because since Keem continues to be a unit that cannot move, if you have defeated all of the minions for the opposing faction, your units, your minions, will continue to march towards the gate like they always do. But as long as Keem is here, your heroes don't go into campfire mode. So if you don't have the money to buy a lifeboat, you can slowly march them back to your fortress gate 1 or 2 hexes at a time. So keep that in mind, that Keem being alive here, the scenario will not end until both sides have lost all their minions. So you know, your heroes don't go into campfire mode as soon as all of their minions are defeated. So how do we get rid of these two towers right here? Well, I would suggest using a powder monkey, especially if you can send somebody up ahead of them to remove. Each one of these is going to have a fortification on the bottom. And so this is going to be the chip setup for both of them. So if you can have someone remove the fortification here, the powder monkey, if you time it right, with 3 movement, can get right here pretty easily. With 3 health, they can be within just range of the minaret here, and so you know that they're at most going to take 1 or 2 damage, have 1 health left, and then 1, 2, 3. They can park themselves right here in between this tower, and Keem. And if they're on their promoted side, which is very easy to do with a Swabby in this, with the Horizon's Wrath, they even have spyglass, so Keem can't even see him. But what you actually want to have happen here is the powder monkey to detonate. That will take away then the next 2 tower modifications on each tower, and all of a sudden both of these towers are gone. So think about, whenever you're ready to get rid of these 2 towers, making it so the powder monkey can make it right here in between the 2 of them. So that does take some, you know, manipulating occasionally, slow playing them, and so on and so forth. So we've talked about how to use the powder monkey. We've talked about how to use the buccaneer. That's just simply to take care of this landmark right there so we can build a lifeboat. Also, the gunner here is very, very good in this scenario, because they have not only air defense but then 3 range, which means it can hit Keem, whereas none of your heroes have air defense, but it can also hit say the Royal Talon, or I think that may be the only other one that I'm really truly worried about. But they also have 3 range, which means they can, if you again slow play them appropriately, they can get to a point where they are 3 away, 1, 2, 3 from a tower, but these towers just start with and aren't given additional range, only have a range of 2. So the gunner can take a shot, and they have 2 hit on their promoted side, and again, just use a Swabby to get them promoted. Super simple, free CP, and so the gunner can be taking a shot here. So sending a gunner out ahead of a powder monkey, have the gunner, you know, take a shot here, hopefully make it up to here, take a shot here. All of a sudden, it has taken out its fortifications, and the powder monkey can move in and blow them up. Also, if you use the gunner here after these 2 towers have been removed, they're great in being able to take shots at these 2 minarets before then they get in range, or even, you know, the fortress gate before they're in range of the minarets. So we actually talked about most of the minions or units for the Horizon's Wrath faction. The last one I want to talk about, which I made great use of in my most recent scenario playthrough, is the Corsair. Again, on the promoted side, again, just send out a swabby. Make sure you have the source. It only takes two. Make sure you have the source to bring them back, because they are a great resource for Horizon's Wrath. Basically, you can make it so just about every single one of your guys is running around on the promoted side. But they have capture. The capture keyword states that if they land the killing blow on an opposing unit, they actually get to capture that chip. That chip is going to be removed from the game and placed in the, cell up on the Horizon's Wrath, their pirate ship, and cannot be used in future waves. So, for example, in just about every wave, I believe, double Harriers is used. Double Jousts are used from the second wave on. Double Hummingers are used in the third and fourth wave. And the Royal Talon, which there is only one Royal Talon in the game, is used in the third and fourth wave. So what I was able to do was I used personally the Corsair twice and was able to capture a Joust in the first wave. And so then for the rest of the game, as long as I did not allow their units to make it to my fortress gate and do damage to my fortress gate, in which case I would have had to give the Joust back, as long as I protected my fortress gate, they were only allowed to deploy one Joust each wave when they wanted to deploy two. Same thing later on in the game, and you can pick any one of these, but I figured out how to stack up my Corsair so that it would eventually come toe-to-toe with my Royal Talon, and using the riposte, where even the 3 damage, he just fluffed it off. He definitely laid the killing blow on the Royal Talon in the third round, and so this guy did not even get to deploy because he was held up in my pirate ship because of capture in the fourth and final wave. So making use of the capture, and now you can only hold up to 3 prisoners at a time, and again, if the opposing faction makes it to your fortress gate and does damage to it, you have to give somebody back. So keep that in mind too. But I had plenty of defense here with my air clippers. They were taking down anybody that made it around the corner here, and nobody got close to my gate. Plus I could always pull the plank too, I guess, but they probably would have damaged it before then. But again, making use of your Corsair capture action, knowing that they're going to be deploying multiples of these every single round. The Royal Talon on its promoted side in that wave 4 is brutal. So if you can get rid of him and capture him in the third wave, he never even comes out in the fourth wave. So again, these were all just meant to be tips and tricks on how to utilize the Horizon's Wrath units to be successful in this scenario. And then again, utilizing, once you have cleared off this cannon here, utilizing your cannonballs. Also, just a note, something I overlooked the first time I played through the scenario, but is written in clear English, so this isn't a spoiler or anything. It's written right on the page, that you basically do want to purchase your morale die as one of your upgrades, and then build up your morale, possibly by bringing out Captain Tinbeard or destroying stuff with your cannonballs to earn morale, because that will carry over into the second scenario and give you more upgrades in the second scenario. So hopefully all this was helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, if there's something specific that you'd like to see, whether it's a specific scenario in a game or a specific part of Cloudspire you want to see, or it can be any other game. If you prefer these shorter kind of tips and tricks videos, please let me know. I'd love to hear about your thoughts in the comment section below. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.